Hi everybody, thanks for turning into Peeling Back the Label. Today we have a very special guest today, best-selling author Paulette Kennedy, and she is the author of The Witch of Tin Mountain, Parting of the Veil, and The Devil and Mrs. Davenport. And today that's what we're going to be sinking our teeth into, The Devil and Mrs. Davenport. It's a book packed with a lot of different themes. The main theme is Gothic, but she really delves into all these other little themes, and I can't wait to talk to her about it and why she decided to write it and all that other good stuff. So we're just going to patch her in and get going. Yay!
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Stephanie. I can. Can
Oh,
you hear me?
very good. I'm so glad it worked. Because
Yes.
sometimes the internet gods do not want to be nice.
Yes. The joys of being live, right?
Yes, yes. So I just want to thank you for sending your book. I love
You're
it. We're going to
welcome.
talk all about it and the cover and all the hidden meanings, because I know you did, and all that good
A
stuff.
few.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for
And
having me.
is there anything else you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself at all before we get started?
Sure. So I'm Paulette Kennedy. I am a Gothic fiction author. I write mostly historical Gothic fiction, and there's strong feminist themes in all of my work. And currently, I live in Southern California. I'm originally from the Missouri Ozarks, and I'm at work on my fourth book currently. And so that's just a little bit about me.
Very good. My whole family is from the Midwest too, all from Iowa.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just one state
Yeah.
above Missouri
Yeah.
there.
So even though I live in New York, I always say I have the Midwestern morals and values, even though I'm a New Yorker,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
good.
It comes through. Yes.
Very good. I guess we'll talk about the cover of your book, which I love. I absolutely love the cover. Can you tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, I love the style of the house. It really sets the date and time of when the story takes place. But this tree, I think I know what it means, but I'm just curious. I'll just show the readers what you were thinking about when you were developing this.
Yeah, so I can't take a lot of credit for the cover that came about due to the amazing artwork and talents of Kimberly Glider design. I'm sorry about the crash. My cat knocked something
I'm
off the
outside,
table.
so
Yeah. The joys of being live again.
no, I get, which
But
is good. It gives you energy.
yes, it does. So the cover was designed by Kimberly Glider, and I had a little bit of input on the creative brief, and I wanted something that really evoked mid-century, and she did that really well because there are a lot of houses in the town that I'm from, Springfield, Missouri, which is what I based Myrna Grove on, that look like that, that were kind of built in the 50s and 60s. And so she took that, and it's this idyllic, like suburban feel with the cover, and then there's this huge crack running down the center, and that symbolizes a lot of what happens in the story, as you know, since you've read
Oh,
it.
so it's not a tree. It's a, well, I know, okay, I know all the cracks in the house and stuff, but for some
Yeah.
reason I thought it was like an old decrepit tree, but it's actually like a crack in the wall, say, and the
Yeah,
ceiling and all that stuff. Because I was going to ask you about that because the house had all the cracks getting worse and worse, and the sinkhole. And I know with
yeah.
Gothic books, you have to have something, whether it's like a dark house or a cellar or whatever. So I just figured you picked the cracks in the ceiling and, the sinkhole and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Oh, and by the way, I didn't even know I liked Gothic books. Like I might have read a Gothic book before but didn't know it was Gothic.
Hmm.
And Patricia Sands is the one who referred me, had she was on my show, and we were talking about books that she's read lately that she loves, does she recommend, and she recommended your book. And
I
that's
love
how
Patricia.
I decided to read the book. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I didn't even know I liked Gothic. So,
Well,
so you introduced me.
I'm glad that you liked it. Yeah, Gothic is kind of one of those genres, and I'm very grateful that Patricia put me on your wavelength. I love Patricia. She's a wonderful friend. Um, Gothic is one of those genres that kind of combines a bunch of different genres into one. You've got some mystery, you've got romance, you've got suspense, some horror. It's kind of an offshoot of the horror genre. And a lot of times when people first encounter Gothic, they're like, what is this? Like, what kind of book is this? Because
Hmm.
it doesn't fit neatly into any one category. And that's because it's its own category, and that's Gothic. And so uh, it was a category that the genre that I first fell in love with whenever I became a reader. My mom really loved Gothic fiction, and she read a lot of it. She was always reading Victoria Holt and Phyllis Whitney and V.C. Andrews. And so I grew up around all of those books, the Brontes, Daphne du Maurier. And she would finish a book and then she would give it to me and I would read it. And so that's where my love of Gothic came
Ah.
from, is from my mother. Yes.
That is so great. Yeah, I had no idea. And when you even look at the book, you don't even think it's a Gothic book because of the cover. It's not what you expect it to be, which is even more enticing.
Well,
So I
thanks.
loved it. I really, really did. Now, when you were writing the book, well, how did you decide to like do the 1950s, housewife and the terrible husband and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the inspiration behind the book, there are a lot of different inspirations behind it. I love the work of Shirley Jackson, who wrote during the 1950s, who was a housewife and an author. And so she helped inspire some of the facets of Loretta. But mostly, Loretta is a reflection of my own mother and grandmother and the lives that they led. My mother was a full time homemaker. She endured three abusive marriages, and I was present for two of those. And so a lot of her experiences and what I witnessed as a child went into Loretta's characterization. I would say Lucas is probably the closest thing to being my representation in the book, because I was a lot like Lucas in many ways, with my mom. And also my own experiences. I grew up and I got married, and my first marriage was a very volatile one. And, we tend to repeat those patterns. And so Loretta kind of came about as an offshoot to my own experiences. I wanted to write something that I knew. And also, I wanted to write something that represented what a lot of women experienced in the 1950s and even still today. I think homemakers are like the undersung heroes of
Hmm.
our society. And I think without the contributions of women, both paid and unpaid, in the workforce and in the home, society would not progress, and technology and science and such would not have progressed at the rate that they did without the contributions of women. And so this is a little bit of my homage to the homemakers. And I've gotten a lot of really great feedback from stay at home moms and from, I call them stay at home feminists, who don't feel represented in
Hmm.
modern contemporary fiction, and even sometimes feel looked down upon if they choose to
Hmm.
stay at home and raise their families when their children are young.
Hmm.
And, in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't as much of a choice for women as it is now to stay at home and raise their families. And I think now it's more of a collaborative effort between partners for the most part, where
Hmm.
it's a decision that they make together. But, in the 50s, it was just kind of the default that, once you had kids, especially, you would stay at home and you would care for the home, care for the children, and your husband would go out and advance his career. Well, he wouldn't be able to do any of that without the contributions of his
Right.
wife.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that was kind of what I was getting at a little bit. And of course, I put a little bit of my own Midwestern slant on things because of, the society that I was raised in and the town I was raised in. Religion is a huge component of what constitutes so-called family values in the Midwest. It's going to church every Sunday. It's going out and having fellowship with your church going friends and such. And some of that is really positive, but there's also a negative component to it too. And especially nowadays in modern society, I think we're seeing that more and more. And not to get too political, but there are lots of things in this book that are metaphors for things that are going on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't even believe, I didn't realize that women couldn't even open a checking account without like a man. Like not only
Yeah.
the husband, but well, what about your brother or your uncle? It's like, are you kidding? Like I had no clue. I didn't realize that. And
Yeah.
it's
I
not
think
that
our
long
generation,
ago.
yeah. I think our generation is the first that has been able to take that for granted, that we could just, go get a job, cash our paycheck, put it in the bank, pay our bills, and go get a loan for a car or get a loan for a house. I think it is 1974, which was the year that I was born, where broadly across the United States, a woman could open up a line of credit on her own
Mhm,
without having a male cosigner. And a lot of that is due to the efforts of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like who was
mhm, mhm.
elemental in getting a lot of these laws passed.
Absolutely. No, you put so many different kind of themes in the book. And I mean, I know Loretta, right? That was the main protagonist. She started out being, so, low self-esteem. She just thought, everything was her fault and, all that kind of stuff. But, as the book went on, she got more and more confident with herself. And to me, she ended up being a badass, like relentless, like I'm not letting this go. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And she didn't care what obstacles came. She was going to handle it. And I was just like, her cheerleader the whole way.
I'm so glad that you felt that way. And, the thing about Loretta and the thing that I love about heroines in women's fiction, especially, is they don't always have to be wielding a sword or be like in the espionage field or be in law enforcement to be a badass. Like,
Hmm.
you can be a badass in your everyday life by the choices that you make and how you show your agency in your own life. And with Loretta, a lot of it is just waking up to the fact that she has choices, even though they are limited for her time period. She has choices about how she can approach her daily life. And you see her growing into who she is meant to be because, this is a woman who's very young still at the beginning of the story. She got married when she was 16 years old, which was also very common for women of the
Hmm.
era. My mother got married at 15 the first time, had a baby the year after that. So that sort of like, I didn't know myself at 15 or 16 years
Yeah, I
old. And I
know.
don't
I
think,
know.
yeah,
I, I
so
can't even
this,
imagine it. Like, looking at a 15-year-old kid now, you know,
right. Yeah.
no, 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 no.
Yeah. My kid is 20 and I can't
Yeah, you
imagine.
still can't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, still a kid in my
Uh-huh.
head.
Hmm.
But it was a different world then, and especially in the Midwest and in the South, when it was very common for
Hmm.
women to get married, and especially if they were from very religious families, because sex outside of marriage was something that was very looked down upon.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, basically, if you kissed a boy, he was going to end up being your husband. Like that was your only
Right,
choice.
right.
you know?
Hmm.
So I think there are a lot of things about the 50s and 60s that are different from what we experience nowadays. But like with Loretta's growth cycle, especially, and her arc throughout, I really wanted to emphasize her self actualization and her growth from being a codependent, abused, subservient woman to a more independent woman who is able to legislate her own destiny.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Can we talk a little bit about, I forgot what you call it. Oh, the deliverance. Like,
Yeah.
Tell me about like your research with that and why you decided to put that in. And I guess, because I don't want to give too much away for the readers, but just a little bit because that's real intense. I
Yeah.
mean, that was really intense. And, I didn't know what was going to happen. And when I started, getting into that part, I was like, oh no.
Well, that scene was very difficult for me to write. I had to, after I finished that scene, I shut my laptop and I went for a long walk because I
Wow.
just needed to get that out of my head. But I also felt like it was an important scene and a pivotal
Yeah.
moment in the manuscript. And I think that scene really puts it into the horror category
Hmm.
because as a woman, especially, like that scene reflects like the lack of agency in that moment that Loretta had, and we go right into her darkest hour after that. There's no hope, kind of with plotting and stuff. um but that scene, I grew up, I didn't grow up in the Assemblies of God church. My grandmother was Pentecostal, and I got into Pentecostalism and the Assemblies of God church whenever I was in my late teens and early 20s. And the whole concept of deliverance, which is what a Catholic would call exorcism, is that a person is afflicted or oppressed by a demonic force, and it's up to the the church and the ministers and the lay people within the church to stand against this evil oppression that has invaded this Christian person. And so in that scene, I was showing something that I've not witnessed to that extreme level, but I have witnessed deliverances before, and what happens to Loretta in that scene, apart from what happens once they go back into the office, is very, very common. And unfortunately, I've done some more research, and even recently, within like the last 10 years, there have been deliverance rituals and attempts that have ended up in the death of or severe
Hmm.
injury of the person being so-called delivered.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
people realize that it's real. This is
yeah,
true. I mean, this is
yeah,
not made up. It's not just in the
no,
movies.
no. And I think a lot of people that haven't been exposed to Pentecostalism, that scene is very shocking
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
if you have ever been exposed to charismatic Christianity or Pentecostalism, like it won't be shocking to you because you will have been to a service and know, or a revival. Revivals especially get wild. Lots of dancing, lots of, and they can be really fun and really empowering and exciting. But that charisma, it kind of turns and evolves into a kind of group think, or a kind of just really wild, I wouldn't say mass hysteria, but that energy kind of continues to grow and build and build and build and build. And people can really get wild during those kind of services. So what I show in that scene is very much what I've witnessed and what I've heard other people talk about whenever they've witnessed deliverance rituals.
Yeah. Yeah, that I was definitely on the edge of my seat with that one because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I've seen it in movies and stuff, but you kind of think, all right, well, they have to make the movie look good. They over exaggerate and stuff.
Yeah,
And I didn't
yeah.
know really about. And when I was reading it, I mean, I don't know. It's to me, it sounded like 100% true. Like you did your research or your own experience, and I just don't think people realize that stuff like that, happened, and
Mhm.
it's probably still even happening today.
Yeah, especially in small rural
Hmm.
communities with smaller church congregations and such. It's definitely still happens. But I have to say, the town I'm from, Springfield, Missouri, we have a big mega church just outside of town called James River Assembly, and they've been in the national news for some of their outrageous claims of, like, most recently they claim that a woman regrew her toe after uh,
Okay.
a
Okay.
healing a healing ceremony where the minister laid hands on her and supposedly she regrew her diseased toe. And there was a whole hashtag going around this is like show us the toe, like, because nobody believed it. And he was also the same pastor who made the news a couple years before that about goat yoga being satanic. So there is like a lot of like this whole satanic panic and paranoia never really went away
Hmm.
for a lot of like Assemblies of God and Pentecostal churches. Like it's still very prevalent. Like anything that is beyond the fray or outside of um, what conservative Christianity considers permissible is considered has a satanic influence behind it. So it's very xenophobic. It's very bigoted sometimes, and so I kind of wanted to show a little bit of those things too
Yeah, no,
in the novel.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, can we go back to the cover with the crack and
Sure.
the seal, I think I knew what they represented, but it was one of the questions I was dying to ask you with the cracks because it was just like it was mentioned, but not really like deep in, like, it just kind of like she noticed more cracks, she noticed more crack, the sink, so I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about that without giving, too much away to the readers again, but I'm just curious um, why you decided to do that.
Well, I used the cracks as a bit of a metaphor for the breakdown of the marriage, for one thing, because things would have continued along the same path if Loretta hadn't changed, right? So she's kind of the source of the schism in the marriage in a way, in a good way. It needed to end, but she is the reason why the so-called family home is starting to fracture because she's waking up, right? And so the cracks start small and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger until there's like a very climactic moment,
Yes.
which I won't give away. Uh, but I had talked to my editor about this metaphorical device, and I asked her, I was like, is this too heavy handed? Is this too like on the nose for the book? And she's like, no. She's like, it's great, go with it. Like, because it symbolizes so many things.
It gets
And it
you
also,
thinking. You're
yeah,
thinking about it.
yeah, it gets you thinking. And like, there could definitely be a scientific explanation for why it's happening, which I go into later. And that's something that is fairly common where I'm from as well. We have all kinds of geological features where I'm from that lead to this sort of thing. And, not to give too much away about what happens to the house, but eventually, it's destroyed by something. And that I wanted the reader to wonder if it was a manifestation of Loretta's
Hmm.
psychic abilities or if it was natural. I always like to leave a little bit of an open-ended question for my
Yeah.
readers. Yeah, so that they can kind of come to their own conclusions. I'm doing that with
Hmm.
my fourth book too, with a certain aspect of that book. Um, but like with that crack, it was kind of fun to just like go all in with the symbolism there. And a decrepit falling down house is definitely an element of Gothic fiction as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. No, I love the way you did that, and I like the thinking aspect. It's always good, you read a good book when you keep on thinking about it after the fact. You just keep on thinking of things, whether it's about the character or the setting or whatever. So for everybody who's listening, it's a good book.
Thank
It keeps you
you,
thinking
Stephanie.
about it well after you've read it. And then things come up and you're just in your daily life. And then you all of a sudden you're like thinking about Loretta or, what she had to do to get to where she was going and, all that kind of stuff. I really definitely enjoyed the book. And I'm going to start reading more Gothic books now because I just didn't, I don't know. I guess I
Yay.
just didn't realize the the genre. I don't know. I just because you just when you think Gothic, you're just thinking of dark, Jekyll and Hyde, that kind of stuff, which I do love, but you're
Hmm.
just not thinking, where your book, it's Gothic, but also a lot of other little themes and,
It feels
slid in.
somewhat contemporary,
Yeah,
right? Like
right,
even
right.
though
It's
it's
like
set in the
it's like like
1950s.
a breath of fresh air
Hmm.
Gothic. You're like the new age Gothic writer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I try even in my novels set like in the further past, like I have one set in 1899. My debut is set in 1899. And then The Witch of Ten Mountain is a dual timeline. And that one's still Gothic, but it's definitely has a little bit of a dark fantasy element because there are witches in
Hmm.
that one. That's my most popular book. But
And that
like
was
with,
the Witch of Tin
yeah,
Mountain.
the
Hmm.
Witch of
Hmm.
Ten Mountain. But like with my next one, I'm going really into like the Gothic again. It's very Gothic, and there's a little bit of a time slip element, which I've had a lot of fun. But it's set
Oh
in the
yeah.
1920s, so I had a lot of fun with my main character, who is very much she was a flapper, so she has a little bit of a fun like modern girl kind of
Hmm.
personality, like, and she's moved past that now because she's getting older and she's getting a little bit more settled in her ways. But I always like to like draw those parallels because people haven't changed. Like people are the same like in the past as they are now. It's
Hmm.
like laws change, society changes, things change, but people at their heart are still the same, and they still have the same concerns and the same things that motivate them. So I like to show that even though I write historical fiction, there's always something relatable there for the modern reader. And that's one of the things I love the most about Gothic too, because you get to have a little bit of fun with the paranormal and the supernatural, which
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
always
we didn't even get
enjoyed.
into the paranormal psychic stuff. We didn't even get into that yet, but we will.
Awesome.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Paulette.
No, it's
But yeah, no, I'm
okay.
so happy that, you're continuing with your Gothic. And do you know the title of your next book or when it's coming out?
Well, it'll be out in 2025. We don't have a title or a publication date yet. We're still talking about the title. I just
Okay.
finished my first round of developmental edits. I'm starting my second round of developmental edits this week, and then we'll be deciding on a
Okay.
title
Well,
soon though,
at
because
least the
it's getting
hard
ready to
part
go
is
into
over with. The
production.
hard part is
Yeah,
done.
it's written.
Now it's just tweaking and, I mean, that's still a lot of work, but at least the hard part is over.
Yeah.
So that this is more exciting because you know what you're getting to the finish line.
Yeah, getting closer. And titles. I feel like I've had two books where I kept my working title, The Devil and Mrs. Davenport and The Witch of Ten Mountain. Those were the title from the very beginning until publication. But Parting the Veil, that title changed. And then, of course, this one had a different working title. I started out writing it as The Last Light of Autumn, and they marketing kind of felt like it didn't really reflect the Gothic themes in the book, and the speculative fiction themes. So we're going to go with a little bit more punchy. Um, but the themes
Yeah.
are why I chose that, because we have an elderly character who's a big part of the story, and autumn is kind of one of those good metaphors for end of life, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Can you tell me why you chose to use the name Davenport?
So Davenport's
I'm just curious.
well, the title kind of came to me out of the blue one day as I was just putting away groceries, but like I thought that it flowed really well. I started out as kind of a poet. So I'm always like listening to how words flow and sentences flow together. And that just kind of came to me. And I was like, I really like the rhythm of this title. And Davenport, um, I like that name. It's a fairly common name. And that was kind of the point too. Like, I wanted Loretta
Yeah,
to
because it
kind
did
of be a
ring a
little bit of an
bell.
every
Like I'm like,
woman.
where did I hear that name from?
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah, there
didn't
was
know
another
where,
novel that
but
came out a couple years with a black family with that last name. But yeah, I've seen it in a few other book titles too. But a Davenport, and this is why it's so fitting for Loretta. A Davenport is a type of sofa too, right? So it's a type of
yes.
couch or sofa. And Loretta
Hmm.
very much feels like part of the furniture, like
Yes.
especially when the first part of the story, and I think a lot of women in that era did.
Mm-hmm.
they felt like, okay, I'm here basically as a housekeeper and a babysitter, and that's really about what my life is. I don't feel like I have any autonomy. I'm basically just part of the furniture. And so that's one of the reasons why that her last name stuck as Davenport, is because it was at once a fairly common last name, and also, a, a good metaphor for a woman of Loretta's class and station at the time, as a stay-at-home mother and housewife.
Yeah, no, I loved it. It did have a good sound to it. It's like you kind of recognize it, but you don't know where from, and yeah. So I thought that was kind of ingenious.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's one title I can take full credit for. So
Uh, so tell us, what good books have you been reading lately? What's on your night table or your headset, or that kind of stuff.
oh, this is always one of my favorite questions. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
almost finished with my friend Marilyn Simon Rothstein's next book. It's called Who Loves You Best? And it's this amazing story about a podiatrist in her 60s who goes to babysit her granddaughter in the Berkshires. And it's going to be out this fall. And so it has so many great, like, fall vibes, which I'm all about.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere and the humor. Marilyn has a wonderful sense of humor, and that really comes through in the book. And I love the heart behind her characters too, because she has some really colorful characters. Like, there's a 27-year-old grandma in the book named Granny Annie, who I'm absolutely, like, head over heels in love with, because she's just so unique and fun. I love her character. And I'm also I finished recently a book by my friend Monsi Shaw called A Good Indian Girl. And it is about a young divorcee who ends up traveling to Italy after her divorce to kind of reclaim her own independence and her identity as a chef. And she ends up on this journey of self actualization as well. And it's just a wonderful book that will be out also this fall in September.
Very
So I read a
nice.
lot of arcs. I have a pretty extensive arc list of, like, books that are coming out soon and yet to become coming out, which are mostly what my reading list is. But, like, I have so many authors that I love and admire. Constance Sayers is a good friend of mine, and her beautiful novel, The Star and the Strange Moon, was absolutely phenomenal. That one came out at the end of 2023 in November. That's a Gothic I would recommend to you,
Okay.
because it has a strong romantic subplot, and it's very, like, accessible and engaging. It's not too scary. There's scary parts, but it doesn't feel like a full-on horror novel. Hester Fox is another great Gothic fiction author. I'm giving you all these Gothic fiction authors so that you can
What
kind
was
of
the
fill
name
my
again?
good
I missed
reading list.
that. Oh,
Hester Fox.
Hester.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, she has a lot of really good Gothic novels that have that romantic subplot. Um, and Sarah Perry is also another good one. She has another book that just came out recently. The title is escaping me right now, but there are just so many great books. My TBR stack is a mile high next to my
Yes.
bed.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially being an author and being, the authors it's a really great community. I mean, even like with just Bookstagram, you can just tell how the authors, they help each other out, nice camaraderie going. And, you know, maybe you gave Patricia the arc to read. I don't know. You know what I'm
I
saying?
did,
And
yes, yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And so, you're helping each other out by giving your review and your ideas and vice versa and stuff. So, I think that's so great with the author community that, that there shouldn't be any competition. I'm not an author, so I don't think there is a lot of competition, because I'm hoping the good writers know that there's more than enough people out there that will read your book. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
There's so
The
many
other
people
authors
out
are
there.
not our competition. Like, I can tell you, like, as soon as I finish one book by an author I love, I'm ready to read anything like it. So even if books come out like at the same time and they have similar themes and similar plots, I don't look at that as competition. I look at that as like, oh, somebody is going to read my book or read this other author's book, and then they're going to go to mine or they're going to go to theirs. And we all help each other out, especially when we're avid readers. Like most authors are very avid readers, and most people that do Bookstagram and stuff are, we're reading 50 to 100 books a year, right? So,
Hmm.
like, there's never going to be enough books for us.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, the support and the camaraderie that I've experienced from the author community, people like Patricia, people like Marilyn, like we've all supported one another whenever our books come out, and we read and we review, and we're always talking each other up on social media. And that's how it should be. I really believe
Hmm.
that. I've been a business owner off and on throughout my life, and I've never seen my colleagues as competition. I really believe that adage about a rising tide lifts all boats,
Hmm.
and I try to live by that. And time, of course, is hard to manage sometimes, even though I'm a full-time author, like I'm very busy. I think you can be as busy as you want to be in this career, whether you do it part-time or full-time. And like I would say probably at least 70% of my time on any given day, like the first 3 hours of my day are for my writing, right? So I'm getting up, I'm getting my coffee, and I'm getting to work. But after that, the rest of my day is mostly spent like supporting the efforts of other authors. So I'm either reading a book to blurb it, I'm reviewing, I'm boosting their posts on social media. Like I'm not necessarily promoting my books like as much as I promote other people's books. I do promote my own books because we have to, but I feel like, especially with my most recent book with The Devil and Mrs. Davenport, what helped carry that launch, and I was telling Lainey Cameron and Paulette Stout this the other day when I was on their show. Really, I believe what carried that book and helped it be somewhat successful is just the support of the author community
Uh,
and all of those connections that I made whenever my first two books came out, and people that I got to know, and I supported their books and they supported mine. And I really like reciprocity is always appreciated,
I
right? So,
absolutely. You get what you
yeah,
give.
you
Hmm.
do get what you give, but like I also recognize that some people aren't able to support at the level that I am because they have full-time jobs and such.
Right, right.
So like I don't like get offended like if there's
Hmm.
not like across the board reciprocity with other authors, but I do like it, to know that like we have that network of people that are rooting for us. It's
Hmm.
really powerful, and it helps build your confidence a lot.
Yes, I hear so many times authors saying, they're in an author group or a beta reading group, and it helps your self-esteem, your confidence, everything, because they're
Yeah,
in the same boat
absolutely.
you're in, you're
Yeah,
all in it together. So
we really
whatever,
are.
whatever their suggestions are, you take with a grain of salt, but you could choose what you want to listen to and what you don't. But it's still that you're all in the same boat together, so it's all okay.
Yeah, it's all okay, and we're all trying to figure this out. I equate publishing to being a writer and being an author and getting published to being a professional gambler. Like there's so much chance involved in what we do. Yes, we have to have skill and talent, but skill and talent will only get you so far. Like as far as traditional publishing goes, you also need a lot of luck and people supporting you, and anybody that you have supporting you that's rooting for you, like that's like helping your odds in so many ways,
Hmm.
and like paying that forward and doing that for other authors is super important.
I agree, and I'm going to also mention, like, even the bookstagrammers, um, they love supporting authors and helping authors, and doing a post for them, or reading their arcs. Last month I did you know, a whole section on just the bookstagrammers and what they do. I mean, some are reading like, 50 books a month,
Yeah,
just because they
it's
want
amazing.
to, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's not like they're getting anything in return where, you know, you might be reading your friends' books because you know they're going to read your, you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Right.
you know, I can't even say the word,
Reciprocity. Yeah,
yes,
it's a
I
hard
can't,
word to
I should have
say.
had speech therapy when but, you know, they're just in it because they want to, you know,
Hmm.
they love books and they love helping authors and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, the whole community, I think is great. I've never
Oh, I agree.
been involved in a community where everybody just wants to help everybody succeed. They all want everybody to succeed,
Yeah.
you know?
And that's the thing, the more of us succeed, the more books we have. Like, I heard a statistic about how like the romance genre especially like upholds so many other genres that don't sell as rigorously as romance does. And that's why I have such respect for romance authors, because really like the proceeds from romance authors are what keep publishing going. And so like I have a lot of friends who write romance, and I really admire what they do. And it's such an important genre, especially for women, to see themselves reflected, and also like it's very empowering. But I have friends who write in all different genres. If they want me to blurb the books, I absolutely will. I don't think I've ever said no to a blurb. The only time I said no was right after my mom died and I was on deadline and I couldn't even write for two
Yeah,
months
you
and I
might
had to say like
not have even written a blurb that
yeah,
you were proud of only
right.
because your mind is totally somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I had to delay blurbing for a
Hmm.
while, and then I
Hmm.
had to delay it again this spring for a short period of time. But I always try at least to read and review by somebody's publication date, even if I can't get them a blurb by their deadline, because I just recognize how important it is to have like that author support and those endorsements. It's helped me tremendously. I
Hmm.
remember with my debut, I was scared to death to ask some of my idols to blurb my book. Here I was, a little nobody that they had never heard of. But everybody was so gracious and so
Oh,
generous with their time and with their words. And that just really showed me in a real way just how amazing authors are. And bookstagrammers, like you were saying, like they
mhm.
give so much of their time. And most of the time it's not monetized. Like they're not seeing any kind of
No, no.
monetary benefit from
Mhm.
that. Like only maybe the really big bookstagrammers whose accounts have as influencers have become monetized, but they didn't start out that way.
Right,
They started out like
right.
small, just like all the rest of us.
Hmm.
So I'm very appreciative of anybody who takes the time to read, review, post about my books, share my work. It means so much to me.
I'm so happy to hear that, and I want everybody to know that they could reach you on the on your website. It's just Paulette Kennedy, all one word.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes,
your Instagram is at P Kennedy Writes, WRITES.
yes,
And
that is right.
everybody should sign up for your newsletter so they will know when your book comes out, your next book comes out. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
noticed your book was on sale, The Devil and Mrs. Davenport. Is it still on sale now? Like today? Do you know?
I don't know if it's like on sale at a discount, but you can definitely find it on Amazon. You
For
can
some
also
reason, I thought
request
I
it.
saw something
Hmm.
that it was. I could have saw, or maybe it was the Kindle or like something.
Maybe the
The
Kindle
Kindle was $1.99,
version.
or that's what I meant, something like
Maybe.
that.
I don't always hear about the sales, like unless I like actively go to Amazon and look for
Yeah,
like
I know. It's
sometimes
like,
I
oh,
find
I didn't
out,
know it was on
oh, it's
sale.
on sale.
Yeah.
Or like Susie
Well,
will Susie Leopold will like post Susie approved will post the Kindle deal
yeah,
sometimes, and I'll see
but it
them
was on
that way.
sale. I don't know if it still
Yeah.
is, but everyone should check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Um, it's in bookstores, it's in libraries, so I'm sure wherever they look, they will find your book. And we can't wait for the next one to come out.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited about it too, and I can't wait to share more about it whenever I have a cover and a title and a publication date and all of that coming soon.
Very
So,
good. I can't wait. And then we'll have you on again next time with your next book.
oh, I'd love to. Thanks so
Uh,
much.
Thank you so much for coming on, Paulette. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.